Hola, ¿qué tal, queridos guardavidas? Gracias por estar con nosotros en esta ocasión en un episodio especial transmitido para comentarles los sucesos en Los Ángeles. Y para ello estamos muy contentos de que nos haya podido aceptar la entrevista y estamos muy agradecidos. Es una entrevista en inglés y pues nos da mucho gusto que nos acompañen hoy en esta ocasión. Ed, thank you very much for being with us in Punto de Reunión, this podcast from Mexico. We are in Veracruz. We know you are in LA, in Los Angeles, California. Thank you for this time and for this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Alonso.
It's a great pleasure. We are going to try to engage directly to the point that what is happening. I think that most of the people that is going to listen this episode is already aware of what is the magnitude of this fire that is taking mostly in the Palisades area, and it's getting through LA in some parts that never been reached, and this is very impressive. So in just a very few words, can you tell us what is the situation right now? What is happening right now? What is going on? And if you have a point of view of we say that radiography, the picture of what is happening.
Sure. So we're 1 week into this event. It's been 1 week since the fire started, and these were extraordinary, not normal for Los Angeles, mainly because of the high winds. Everybody talks about it does get windy in Los Angeles this time of the year, but these are the highest winds we've seen in my 35 years. I've lived in Los Angeles for 35 years. I've never seen winds this high. So the day that all the fires broke out a week ago, the winds were gusting around 70 miles per hour, which is double what he would expect in those areas. So that was the biggest factor in these events. And the reason I say that is Los Angeles is a big city. There's 10 million people surrounding Los Angeles. We have fires every single day. We have 40, 50 to 100 fires every day of the year. But they don't get big because it's seldom windy like that. So on the day of the big fires, the winds were high and 6 fairly large fires broke out at the same time in different parts of the city. And the one that you mentioned, Alonso, in the Palisades area was the biggest and destroyed the most buildings. That was extraordinary because that area doesn't burn very often. So it was a part of the city that seldom burns. And the fire started in a neighborhood or in some hills behind homes, and it swept through an area that has never burned before in at least the last 50 years. So that was different, and it was quite alarming. And of course, the devastation was unbelievable. So that was a very unique thing. But at the same time, on the other side of Los Angeles, on the east side of Los Angeles, there was a fire near Pasadena in a place they call Eaton Canyon. And that area has burned multiple times in the past. I've investigated fires multiple times there. So that area wasn't surprising that there was going to be a fire, but the size of that fire was driven by even bigger winds. The winds over there got nearly 100 miles an hour in that canyon, and that blew the embers from the fire into the residential neighborhoods. And so you had 2 different major fires going on at exactly the same time, which completely overwhelmed all the fire departments.
In terms of the region, you say the Eaton Canyon and the Palisades, the fires usually occur there, and they are rapidly suffocated. The fire department, the people that is in the mountains, I don't know the name in English, is like the not the Coast Guard, but the Mountain Guard.
Yes.
They immediately or almost immediately take care of them. But in this case, as you say, the wind was a very important factor, and considering that the wind not only feeds the fire, it also take it far away from its happening. So it's very hard to fight a fire while the wind is happening, right?
That's correct. Once you have a fire of a brush fire or a grass fire that's that big and the wind is pushing it, all the firefighters in the world can't stop it. So, but what they can do is contain it, is what they call. They cut fire lines around it. In California, we use a lot of helicopters and airplanes to fight wildfires. Well, that doesn't work on high winds day because the winds were so bad that many of the airplanes could not fly safely. So for several hours they couldn't bring in all the airplanes that they normally bring in to fight these big fires. And they could bring in a lot of firefighters on the ground, but they can't stop a wall of flame. And so you had two things happening with the wind. One, it pushed the fire faster than ever before. And two, it prevented a lot of firefighting aircraft from joining for a while.
Exactly. And the factor of the wind is it's very like dramatic when it increases the amount of fire. And let's say in Chicago, the wind city, many people don't know that it's called the wind city because of a fire that was fed by the wind, and it practically destroyed the city more than 100 years ago. And it's kind of the same thing happening here. But let's move to like the very short time. In a very few days, a very big area was covered, right? So regarding the material things, we have seen the images. It's very sad to see so many houses and shopping malls and stores and completely lost. But then what about the people? It's like, how aware do you think they were to be like out of it? I know you are not really into social behavior or political or these kind of procedures, but how do you feel that the people react? Because I am amazed that there are a very small amount of casualties, which is very good. And I would like to know if it's because of the people were prepared or the authorities did the right decisions.
It's a combination of both. In modern times, I do teach all over the world on fire death and why people die in fire. So that is one of my specialties. And the people that traditionally die in fires are the elderly or the older people or people that can't move very fast or are sick. That is traditionally who dies in any fire, accidental fire. And that's what you're going to find out when this is over, that the majority of the victims will be over 60 years old. The majority will be. That's they, and there's lots of reasons for that. But you mentioned why there's so few casualties, particularly in the Palisades fire, is because of modern communications. The city, the people knew 3 days before the winds that the winds were coming and that it was going to be bad. Nobody expected it to be this bad, but they knew it was going to be bad. So people were on alert. The fire agencies and the police agencies were on alert, and they practice evacuations because we have fires every year in Los Angeles County. We have large wildfires. So they practice a lot and they're very good at it, evacuating people and animals and pets. But the area is very modern around Pacific Palisades. So people have their phones and they get alerts immediately that there's a fire. And it's covered heavily by the media instantaneously. Los Angeles has lots of news agencies and helicopters that show the fire instantaneously. And so people are aware that there's something big happening. And that's the main reason. If they're monitoring their cellular phones or the television and listening to the news and alerts, they're going to escape the fire for the most part. The people that do die, I'm sorry, the people that do die, just they're not aware that something's going on, or they can't physically move because they're so old or so sick.
Exactly. And Ed, you have a fascinating career. You've been in some of the most complex arson cases in Los Angeles. You have been studied even for fire and gun kind of cases that your experience is helping to investigate and to know what happened in some cases. What was that first thing that drew you to this career? Because it's like a big, whatever a person would like to be a fireman, probably it's something that you have very inside of you. I don't know if it's the same, if or something happened to you. I would like to know, well, like how come you at some point in your life you decided to do this?
Well, I would like to lie to you and tell you something heroic. But I was a police officer. So I worked for Los Angeles Sheriff's, a police agency. It's a very large police agency, and they have an arson investigation unit and a bomb squad. So they investigate explosions and fires. And the only reason I took that job is because it paid the most. So I'm
I
sorry, I'm
believe
not a
the
hero.
relation between the risk and the
The
salary
reward.
is correlated, right?
Yes. So
High risk.
it paid the most. It's a detective job. And I am a detective. I've been a detective for 35 years. And so I really had no personal interest in it until I joined the unit, and it's been fascinating ever since. And because I work in Los Angeles, we have lots and lots of work. Every day we have 20 or 30 or 40 cases that we investigate. So you practice a lot, and you tend to get better by practicing. So anyway, I'm not a hero like the firefighters. I work with them every day. I did it for the money. That's it.
I think you are. I mean, if there is a good money, it's because of the high risk it's involved. But I think it's very brave and very like a strong decision just to decide to be in the military or to be in the U.S. force or to be even in the police department. It's a very high risk involved. And you've been called the International Arson Investigator of the Year, right? So is if there is one particular situation that you can recall and that you can share with those that was part of your career, but also that may make you think to leave what you were doing, like this thing, that's what I'm doing here is like why I'm here. That this kind of situation that you've been to, or some case that you were investigating, is there one particular scenario or situation that you can recall that you can share with us?
Oh yes, you're the first person to ever ask me that. That's interesting. Um, so I've worked on over 2,000 fires, and I started to specialize in two types of fires. One was fire death scenes. So I've gone to a lot of fire deaths, and I started studying it and going to specialized schools for fire deaths. And they're very bad scenes to work. Of course, you're dealing with a burned human body, or several burned human bodies. But when you're working, it doesn't bother you because you're so focused on your work that it doesn't bother you. But there are some cases where I can think of two that were on television shows where mothers killed their children with fire. And one of them, the mother killed all four of her children. And I was on that scene for 2 days. And it didn't bother me when I worked on the scene. But later, years later, when we went to court to prosecute, I had to review all the photos and the videos of the scene. And that's when I asked myself, why am I doing this to myself? Because it was quite difficult to deal with. Knowing I had been there, and these were little children, little girls, all of them. And it was, and like I said, it's been made into a TV program since then, but it was actually quite difficult to go back and revisit the scenes. And after, if you do that for 25 years, it really starts to give you nightmares.
Wow.
So when you asked, is there times when you contemplate leaving? Yes, those wear you down and they impact your family. Um, but then you realize that you have a specialty skill that the public needs to help solve these problems. So you just go back to work the next day and
Exactly.
carry on.
Probably you are not in the front, you are not right in the situation what is happening in the fire, or It's more like you are the CSI of the fire, right? You go after the situation and you investigate who could provoke it, or what situation led to the fire to get bigger and bigger and so on. But I don't know if in Mexico we have the arson like a concept. Is more like a fireman investigator or something like that. We don't really have that, but it's still for the Mexican.
You do. I've worked with some of your investigators on cases. You don't have as many as we do, but you do have some people that are fire investigators, and they're pretty well trained. Yes.
Exactly. And my question was, arson is often misunderstood as a crime. They believe that if you started a fire, it's just it just have to be punished. And we are living now a very strong situation in LA, and we would like to appoint some responsibility to someone. It's like we need that. It's like the people sometimes in that. It's not like me, but for you in the agency, it's like you are searching for some persons, or for some group of people, or some particular person that might let you to identify him or them as the responsible for this fire.
Yes. So the arson investigators like me have a job that has two parts. The first part is to find out where the fire started and how it started. That's going to take several days or weeks to figure that out. There's a lot of science involved in that, a lot of interviews and things like that. Once we find out where it started and how it started, now we try and find who's responsible for it. Right now, I can tell you that these fires in Los Angeles, none of them appear to be arson or criminal related fires.
This is very important. A lot of conspiracy theories are already running around. It's because of they would like to make a highway on the way that it's been the fires. They are trying to build a new shopping mall. There is information hidden there that it's just destroyed. It's very good to give a certainty to the people that it is nothing like that, right?
Not right now. It's not. And the fire in Palisades appears to be related to a previous fire. That's the preliminary information. There was a fire there a week prior to the big fire, and it was a fire due to people using fireworks on New Year's Eve.
So far, more than 50 arrests have been taking place, and they are not really connected, but they believe that it's like they are suspects, and they are investigating that. In your opinion, how much of a role of do human actions interact or are really connected by the idea of the person to do harm, to do like or it's just by mistake? It's like, do you believe that out of these 50 arrests you are going to find someone guilty, or was just circumstantial, like it's not really their intention to do the fire?
Okay, so to be clear, of those arrests that you mentioned, only one of those is for setting a fire.
Oh, okay.
And the person that was arrested set a fire in a different part of Los Angeles that was only 10 feet in size, so it wasn't part of these big fires. Okay. The other arrests that you're hearing about are true. They're for people going into the scenes after the fire and looting or stealing. That's what all the arrests are for.
Okay.
So those looters had nothing to do with starting the fire. They just come in a couple days later and steal from the homes that are vacant or deserted. That makes sense?
Yeah, it is totally. I believe that it's very hard to identify that someone is doing it in purpose, right? It's like probably was negligence, probably was even a picnic or something like that you don't stop the fire. You are not 100% sure of suffocating it, and then the tragedy came after that.
Yes, those are very common causes for wildfires, is human behavior but they didn't intend to set the fire as a crime. They didn't intend to commit arson, but they had a fire that they probably shouldn't have had. And like you mentioned, a cooking fire or a campfire, or somebody doing a prank, a joke, and it got out of hand.
Are you like hired? Are you part of the investigations right now?
Not right now, but I will be hired by somebody. I'm a consultant to attorneys and to police agencies now. I'm retired from my police job, and now I do consulting work for government agencies or police departments, or even private attorneys who are inquiring about these events.
I'm asking because one of the hardest things that you do in your job is the death scene analysis, and you go there and you have to identify the body, and this is very 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 hard. It's I think that you need a strong nerve to like go there and deal with that. Is there, like, not in this case, but is there any experience, any anecdote that you would like to share with us?
Yes, fire death scenes. We go into them, we recover the body, and we find out if it was an accidental event or a murder. Maybe it was a murder, and maybe somebody murdered somebody and set a fire to cover that. And so I've dealt with quite a few of those cases like that, a couple hundred. But I've been involved in cases where 30 or 40 people died in one place. Wow. And those are very overwhelming, where you're trying to deal with 30 bodies in one building. And you have to bring in a lot of help. And what you have to do is, this is a phrase we use, we don't bring the most people to our scenes to help us, we bring the right people. You just can't bring in untrained people to help. So we bring in special CSI people and special photographers and dogs, search dogs and things like that. And it will take weeks to recover a scene like that, where there's that's called a mass casualty event, where lots of people die in one spot. And those are extraordinarily difficult to work. And there's a lot of pressure from the governments to do something, and it just takes long, slow work by investigators and CSI people to go through those scenes, because we can't rush our work. You only have one chance to do a death scene or a fire scene, and you can't be rushed. You can't be. And the reason I say this is politicians get involved in cases like this, and they want to start pretending that they're investigators, and they try to give you advice, or they want to put themselves into the case, and that's not their job. Their investigators are professionals, and they're trained, and just let them do the job that they're trained to do. So a lot of times when we're doing big scenes, we have to deal with local politicians to keep them out of our business.
And if we move our conversation to the prevention and the awareness of the people, if there are many mistakes in the what to do while some big issue like this, or some kind of situation is in front of us, and sometimes even if we are prepared, we make mistakes. Do you know what are, like, probably the most common mistake that people do under this kind of pressure in a fire, during a fire?
The biggest mistake is they don't get prepared ahead of time. They just don't believe it's going to happen to them. So right after these fires, people will prepare for the next one, and then 1 year later they'll forget all about it. And these fires in Western North America happen every year. Maybe not this big, but fires like them happen every year, constantly.
In California, we know, in San Francisco, in Santa Clara, it's very common. Yeah.
Yeah, all the Western North America, Canada, parts of Mexico, these big fires happen every year. So they're going to happen no matter. You can't stop them, but you can be prepared to save yourself and save your family. And a lot of people are cautioned to clear vegetation around their homes, and they don't. They forget about it, and then they try to do it on a day right before the fire starts, and it's too hot and it's too windy, and maybe they accidentally start a fire themselves trying to clear vegetation. And so the big thing is to be prepared, but then stay prepared for this year and for next year. It's the same thing when big rains come. You're down in an area that gets hurricanes. It's just, you have to prepare. It's going to come. You just can't deny that it's going to come.
Is climate change changing things? Is like we see that the heat is harder. The cold season is harder. The wind season probably is moving from one month to the other. Is climate change a factor?
It is a factor, but climate change doesn't start fires. People start fires. And fires have always been in North America, even before Europeans came here. There was always fires. So it's nothing new. Climate change has changed the months of the year that we have fires. And it also has made the fires burn a little bit longer and bigger. It certainly has. But it doesn't create fires. Climate change doesn't create fires, but it does make the fires a bit worse, yes. And you mentioned it changes the time of the year of fires. The fires used to be more in August and September. Really? Now we get, and over the years, they're slowly going to October, November, December, January.
Wow.
And this year we might have fires. It's a La Nina year, which you probably know what that is. We'll probably have fires all winter long this year.
I'm asking because in terms of prevention, sometimes we would like to point people, no? or situations, or it's not my fault. I even if I was prepared, right? So for the Santana winds, we know that they are happening every year. Is just what you mentioned. But how much these natural events can take us under prepared? Is it like, if you are prepared for any time of the year, or you have to be prepared for some changes during our lives now and ever? It's like,
you have to constantly be prepared, constantly educate yourself. And people that live in cities with a lot of people in them, they have to understand that the roads, the highways, and the roadways are not made for everybody to drive on them at the same time. So that happened in the Palisades a little bit. They have plenty of roads, and they're nice roads, and everything's maintained, but they're not built for everybody to drive on at the same time. So when people all wait to evacuate at the last minute, the roads can't handle that many people. And that is in any city like Mexico City, very big cities. The roads can't handle everybody on them at the same time. And so that is where you will have, if people don't understand that, that is where you will have mass casualties in a future fire, is people will be parked in their cars trying to get out because they waited too long to get out.
Right.
And so people have to move quicker, or maybe even the day before a big wind, just leave the area if they think they're in danger. I don't know. There's not an easy solution.
You may change even your safety routes. You may have thought that the safety route is going north, and probably the fire's in the north, so your safety route is spoiled. You have to go somewhere else, right?
Right, and people have to remember that the roads they plan on using are going to be filled with fire engines and police cars.
Exactly.
And they're not expecting that. They just think they can drive like any other day of the year. But there's going to be way more people on the roads at that time. So you pointed out they have to have more than one escape route.
Exactly.
Things like that.
As an instructor, you've been an instructor for the California law enforcement agencies.
Yes.
How is the everyday for citizens to identify potential fire hazards? Is like, you teach that, you tell them to be aware all the time, or even for criminal activity related to fires, or it's something that anyone can be aware of that even without the preparation?
Yeah, so what we tell people, if they don't want to be a victim of fires, is clean the areas around your home so that there's not a lot of debris or old vegetation around your home. And then inside of your home, if you're practicing something we consider unsafe, you should stop doing that. A lot of people, older people, still like to use candles in their home because it's nice and it's comforting. But candles are a flame, and any flame in your home is dangerous. I'm not telling people not to have fun. I'm saying if you're going to use a candle in your house or candles for whatever, you better be in that room the whole time that the candle is burning. And if you leave, blow out the candle, because a pet can knock over a candle, or an earthquake can knock over a candle, or a child can play with a candle. So if you're going to use candles, that's fine. Just be in the room while you have the candle burning. Just simple little things like that prevent a lot of fires.
Even fireworks in let's say for July or Cinco de Mayo or some other festivities, you use a lot of fireworks. I think that most of them are very well designed to be safe, but even those can get out of control and just not, you may not be aware because your firework may go to your neighbor's house, right?
Right. So in California, most fireworks are illegal, but that doesn't stop people from using them. There's
Right.
millions and millions of fireworks. And on the dates you mentioned, the 4th of July, Cinco de Mayo, New Year's Eve, Halloween, or the Day of the Dead, people light off tens of thousands of fireworks. And on those nights in Los Angeles, we have hundreds of fires because these things, the people aren't intending to set a fire, but the firework lands on a neighbor's roof, or it goes into a palm tree and or into the brush and starts a fire. And we have hundreds and hundreds of fires on those nights.
Exactly.
So I can't tell people to stop having fun, but be careful with them.
All the time. In the cultural and social reflections that we may do, just to be close to start closing our conversation, is like arson is often seen in pop culture, in movies, in series, and I still agree that they are kind of heroes, but most in the investigation area. They are the brains in the firefighting and the fire investigation, but they are some biggest myths behind the or misconceptions behind the functions and the real activities of an arson development of activities. Uh, what do you suggest for the people that is listening to us to invite them to be part of the arson forces and to be part of these investigation activities?
Well, we want people to cooperate with us when we ask questions. If there's an arsonist in your neighborhood, people will usually cooperate, and they'll call us and they'll tell us, because typically if a person's an arsonist, they will light from 20 to 200 fires. That's not rare. It's actually quite common. So if we catch them early, we need the public's help. And they do help. A lot of the people grab the arsonists and hold them, or they film them. And so people do usually help us with arson cases because they don't like arsonists either. But if you've seen something like that, call your police, and they will take your statement, and we are trying to stop these people from starting fires, and we absolutely need the people's help to do that. We
But
we can't be everywhere.
what about becoming an arson investigator? What about inviting
You
them to
can
be part of the force?
Yeah, it's so if you want to do that, you can do that as either a firefighter, join a fire department, or you don't have there is private arson investigators who just went to schools to learn how to investigate fires, and anybody can be one. It's like being a private investigator. That you just get some training. It's Now I will tell everybody that is very, very difficult schools to go through. It's a lot of science. It's a lot of chemistry. You have to understand how fire burns, But there is schools to go to that any citizen of anywhere can be an arson investigator, whether they're a firefighter or not. So, and it's a very exciting career, and there's a lot of work. So some people make a lot of money doing fire investigation, millions and millions of dollars.
It's kind of a new profession in the sense of what are we going to see in the next 20 or 50 years. We know that many activities are going to disappear with artificial intelligence. They are going to supply a lot of knowledge and a lot of working activities. But I think this is not one of them. I think this is going to need the feeling and the perception of a human being. But how do you think that the technology is going to help you to reach your results and to move faster? You already mentioned that with technology, the people were informed precisely and on time, and this was a very good thing to help them move out quickly or faster. But what about the technology to be part of your activities? Drones,
so
robots?
We have used increased technology now. Every year it gets better to investigate fires. So one of the big fires was probably started by power lines, the electrical lines. And in the old days, we would have to cut the lines down and bring them in and inspect them by hand. But now we can use drones to fly right up to the lines and take crystal clear video from 2 inches away of any damage to the power lines. And they can inspect an entire power lines through drones. We use computers to map electrical surges in power lines. So to be an arson investigator, you have to know technology and study it. And so a lot of investigators get their start by go to engineering schools. So many arson investigators have gone to engineering schools.
My last two questions, Ed. The first one, the craziest thing you've been facing, and probably not the ugliest thing. I think that you have seen so many terrible things, but the craziest, like something you found during an investigation, or something that you didn't expect and it happened, or some kind of a miracle that happened during an investigation that you could share with us.
Okay, quick story. I went into a burned out apartment building with maybe 10 burned out rooms. This building had burned 3 different times, so it was abandoned, vacant. And it burned one night, and I went in by myself and was kind of taking pictures and examining all the rooms in this empty building. And it's a little scary and spooky because the building creaks, and it's a lot of things are burned and it makes noises. And as I go into a room, there's a pile of ashes, and I see feet sticking out of them. There's a human body there. And this was the day after the fire, and the firefighters had not seen this body. And so I see a human body there, which sort of alarmed me. If I know there's one there, it doesn't bother me. But if I'm surprised by it, of course, it's alarming. And so I called for some homicide investigators to come to assist me. And then I got shovels, and I started to dig out the pile that this body was in. And I slowly, when we do a fire scene, it's like an archaeology dig, where we're just kind of like taking the layers off. So I'm using a broom and a shovel to slowly take the layers off and take the layers off. And this person who'd been killed I could see that his legs were broken, his arm was broken, and he'd been beaten with a metal baseball bat. And his head was split open. It was pretty awful. And there was blood coming out of his head, and I could even see part of his brain. Okay, so wow, as I'm slowly scraping all this debris off and waiting for other investigators, I see that he has something stuck in his jacket. He's wearing clothes in his jacket, and I reach in to pull it out, and he sat up and started screaming in my face.
Okay. What?
Yeah, so that truly happened.
Wow.
It scared 10 years off my life because I'd been working, standing over him for almost a half hour, shoveling ashes off of him, layer after layer. And I could see that it looked like he'd been beaten to death and the building was set on fire to cover it. Because his head was split open to the point you could see part of his brain. And he sat up and started screaming and yelling at me. And it looked like
dead or was still alive. I don't understand.
He was still alive the whole time. And he had survived the fire. The whole building burned down and he had survived it. Wow. And he sat up and I jumped back, and I'm a police officer and I carry a gun, but I had big, huge gloves on to shovel and move debris, and I couldn't get my gloves off. I thought it was a zombie, right?
Ran out, scared.
Right.
Wow.
And I fell backwards and fell through a wall.
Oh my God.
So now I can't get my gloves off. I can't grab my gun because I'm going to shoot this zombie. Thank God I didn't. And I fell through the wall and I jumped up and I just ran out of the building. And as I did, some other police officers showed up and they saw me and I looked terrified. I know I did. And I couldn't even hardly speak. And then this guy came walking out of the building and scared everybody else because his leg was broken. He was dragging it and his arm was broken. And you couldn't even tell his face because it was covered in blood. But he was alive and he had somehow survived the beating and the fire that burned the building down. And so when you told me to tell a strange story, that was it. I'm an author and I've written several books, and I put that in one of my books, and people always call me and ask me about that story.
It's going to be a great story. Oh my God. It's like, I've never heard something like that.
I wouldn't have believed it if I wasn't there. And thank God I didn't shoot him because he was alive and he lived, he survived. Somehow he survived.
It was a miracle. I didn't expect what kind of a miracle you were about to share with us. Okay, before we finish with this, my last question is usually directed to the last advice or the good advice or the biggest advice that you can give us in this kind of situations. Probably is like, with all your experience been investigating the reasons for fire. I don't know if there is one particular advice that you can share with us, but what could be this advice that may change from life to death to our audience that they can take as a very, very strong advice?
Here's the best advice. If you have a fire in your home or in a building you're in, if you see smoke or see a fire, even if it's small, get up and leave immediately. Most of the people that die in fires don't have to die in fires. It's because they delayed their leaving. People tend to ignore warnings. They think, oh, it's a small fire. I'm going to go grab my cell phone and my car keys and my pets and whatever. And the next thing you know, we find them deceased in the house because it's not the fire that kills you. It's the smoke and the gases that make you pass out, and then the fire comes and burns you.
Once you are unconscious, it's too late. It's like once you are unconscious.
People don't understand how dangerous even a small fire is. So if you're at a restaurant or a movie theater and an alarm goes off, get up and leave now, because if you hesitate, fire can go from survivable to deadly in 30 seconds, and you don't know because you're not experienced in fire. And even people like me don't know if it's going to be a deadly fire. So if you even hear of a warning, get up and go outside. And it's better safe than sorry, because the people that die usually hesitate. That's what happens.
Certainly a very good advice. Ed, thank you very much. This is a great conversation. We have chills, we have laughs, we have the focus on what we have to do. I think that it has everything. So it's a beautiful conversation. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Alonso. Thanks for having me.
And for all our community, I'm sure that they are going to like it too. Once you are part of this podcast, you are part of our community. So welcome, and hope that we can share more thoughts, and we can have another conversation either here or in LA. We expect that these fires are going to stop soon. They are still happening, and they can grow anytime from now. But thanks again, and I hope you and all the people in LA are getting better every day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.